This video is about restoring some evil twin parts for my R1. It's a 2009 R1, and I have an awful lot of evil twin parts. Evil twin parts being things I can change up on the bike to make it feel and look like a little bit different motorcycle over the years. Over the years, the evolution of my crossplane from 2009 to 2022 has involved many custom-made parts, carbon fiber parts, paintwork, custom wheels, handlebars, several sets of handlebars, 2 different exhaust systems, 2 different nose fairings, the headlight inserts, a Ferrari and a no Ferrari version of the motorcycle, and on and on and on. Getting rid of the clip-ons was a major thing. So I made an exhaust system pretty much from scratch to replace the one that's on the bike, and it just goes on and on. Now today I want to work on some evil twin parts for the R1. I have made so many evil twin parts over 13 years I've owned the bike, and these are 2 I've been waiting to make. Probably a little bit too long. I should have made them earlier, but today's the day we're going to get started on it anyway. Now over the 13 years I've owned the bike, I've made 2 pillion seats, one high, one low. I've made a full exhaust system, the mufflers from carbon fiber. These are the stock ones, which are quieter. I painted the rims. That was an enormous job. Right in the beginning, I made my own tail tidy. So what happens is you look at the bike. Over the years, I had a piece, and this is the piece I'm going to work on today. This piece, I had the traction pads when I was riding very aggressively with Luciano. We don't do that anymore. So we're going to put the paint in. I'm going to make a set of painted parts from the old parts, and that's going to be today's project. But over the years, I've noticed that anything that used to be flat black and I make shiny black, I like it better. The mirrors, shiny black, not flat black. The headlight pieces, unique headlight pieces like the Josh Hayes race bikes, one of a kind. But every single part of the bike, it's all small details. And this piece here, to be honest, we may get this done in a day or 2. I think that'll change the look of the bike. Now I love evil twin parts. I have, again, these custom made pillions. I have extra seats. I've made several seats, different heights, different shapes. Over the 13 years I've got 2 windshields clear and 1 carbon fiber. And all of these parts, they're evil twin parts. They allow me to change the bike incrementally, so I constantly feel like I have a new bike. And it's funny, I've had 4 or 5 different sets of bars, rental bars, drag bars. I've had every kind of bar you can on there, and you know what? The ones from a stock GS seem to work the best for me. And it's always amazing to me how you take one part that's flat black, paint it blue, or paint it, in this case we're going to paint this gloss black. It can totally change the look of the bike, and that's what I'm after without spending a lot of money and a lot of time. And a perfect example of my MT-09, every time I took a part that was flat black and painted it blue, or made some tiny incremental detail change, I liked it better. But these parts I think are going to change the look of the bike. I guess we'll find out. And the good news is, if I don't like it, I can just put these back on. You can change that in a matter of minutes. There's only 3 or 4 little fasteners and screws that hold it on. But I do like, it's just me, I like shiny things, not flat black things. It's personal taste, and if you like flat black, we could still be friends. So this is what we start with. These are the original traction pads. So these parts I've had for over 10 years, and the traction pads, they served their purpose at one time, but I really don't care for them now, and I don't need them. I'm not riding that aggressively anymore. I really just want to have the bike as nice and neat and clean, and this always was not an attractive feature, but of course it's functional if you're going to do track days or ride really fast, which I'm not. So the first thing is going to be to get the heat gun out, air dryer, and pull these pads off. And I had the pads on the FZR too, and I took them off. If you're not going to really be super aggressive, to me they're just not that attractive. So I would always suggest anytime you take anything with glue off stickers or whatever, even these pads, warming it up just makes it a little bit easier. But the glue that stays behind, and Karen used to have some stuff that took that right off, but we couldn't find it. We looked in the laundry room. So Sikkens M600 took half of it off, and ordinary acetone took some off, but it really is tenacious stuff. It's difficult to get it off. And I finally just took a razor blade and scraped it off because I'm going to refinish this anyway. But it took a little bit of time. It left scratches, which don't matter. We're going to sand the part. And I had some body work on one of the pieces that has a crack in it. So before I do anything, I want to reinforce it using CA. And without reinforcing it now, it only means it's going to crack again. And 2 or 3 layers of CA on there and then sanded flat. I don't need any Bondo. If I were to put Bondo in a place like that, see, I'm doing the back also. The Bondo would almost guaranteed crack in time, especially on a bike like this where there's a lot of things going on this bike. Your knee is touching that constantly. But that part, when I was done block sanding it out and adding some CA to it, one layer at a time, it came out perfect. You couldn't imagine it any better. Here, in fast forward, we want to keep the video a reasonable length. Block sanding with a soft automotive block, some 100 grit paper. This was a little rough. Usually I would use 180 or so, but not real critical. Nothing here is critical because we're going to prime it, resand it, and maybe even sand out the primer. I don't know yet. But the bodywork on this, when the job was done, the bodywork, I forgot which side it was on. It came out perfect. But anytime you do body work with CA, it tends to really be good. And I've shown that on many of the tutorial videos of fixing fairings and stuff. CA is a wonderful product for doing any kind of repairs. And with one piece done, and I need to start the second piece, and that, the second one is going to have some more work than the first one, and important to use primer sealer. Now, the golden rule is anytime you're going over something that's already painted several times, or more than once would be a better way to put it, primer sealer. Seal it. What that sealer does prevents any of the thinner in the newer paint getting down there and making some kind of a problem or an alligator skin. But anyway, because we had a nice sunny day here to work on this, the paint dried up real quick. Now, there's the body work with the CA totally sanded out, ready for primer. That's the final version of it. And I did almost all of it with the soft block. It's Brodak CA you can get from Brodak.com. And both of these pieces needed work. They each had their own little thing. I reinforced both of them on the back where the tabs were too. I forgot to show that. But that was one of the extra things because these are delicate parts. And they're in a part of the bike where you're squeezing them your knee also. They pressed right up against the tank. So didn't want them to fail in the future anyway. I mixed up some black. The black, like you can imagine, always covers real well. So I didn't want to get more black than I needed on there. I don't want to build up extra paint thickness because this is like the second coat of paint, in fact, or the third maybe. And the thing is, putting thin coats on, just enough until the part is black. That's all. Not to try to make it like you would paint a car or something like that. And thin coats, a lot of thin coats, always better on these type of parts. This laid down real nice. Now, it's not going to be shiny like that when it dries because this is paint that's made to have the clear put right over it. And when I did the second one, of course, just taking my time here. That normally, if you were taking an automotive gun, you just take one pass and that'd be done. Well, we don't do it that way. This takes a little longer, and I've emphasized, especially if people are new to painting, it's a hard concept, but get a lot of thin coats instead of one thick coat. In every way, it can be better. It's better. It's easier to do. The paint flashes off better, in my opinion, anyway. And I'm not a car painter. I don't know. It probably wouldn't work on a car, but it works like a jewel on these parts, that's for sure. Now, in the past, I've used so many different brands of 4-to-1 clear. I haven't seen a big giant difference in any of them. They all seem to work well. This is Gavco, and this was supplied by Turbo Steve on his project. It's what we're using is the leftover paint. And thank you, Turbo Steve, of course. And getting these coats on, so hard to emphasize, thin coats, back and forth. And if you're good at painting cars and you're good with a big automotive gun, yeah, well, maybe you can do that. But I have found it really to my advantage to be going back and forth. Now, many people look at the video and they think I put 100 coats of paint. That paint is going on there very thin, just like an airbrush. And that's one of the little things that I've developed over the years on my own parts so that I don't wind up with excessive paint thickness. When you make paint extra thick, it's prone to crack, and that's a problem. Now, later on in the day, I wanted to look inside and see how this was drying up, and now with the clear on, you can see it develops a nice gloss. But of course, because I'm painting outside, there's dust in the paint, little paint nibs, different things. We're going to sand it out and buff it anyway, so it doesn't even matter. I don't even have to concern myself right now. This is the next day. I let it dry in the garage overnight, and then down in the cellar by heating vent overnight. And now here we got some 2000 grit Rhino wet paper, and it's time. Mix up some soapy water and get sanding. Now, a part this shape, I like to use a soft block 2000 grit, soapy water. There's nothing critical about any of this. And what does work though, the 2000 grit takes a little longer to sand, but for every minute you sand, you save probably 5 minutes of buffing. And you can see this side by side, the part that's sanded, the part that isn't. I try to show it under different lighting so that you can see it. That's an important thing to see. And any flaws, you want to get all the flaws out with the sanding block. Now, once you get the whole part sanded, then I would transition from that part in. I would transition to doing all the details, the edges, the corners, everything by hand. But the block lets you get on a part this shape. It lets you get a nice flat surface. And when the sun hits that, it's going to show. You will see the difference between a part that you got the block sanding done and a part that you didn't. Now, a lot of parts, you always have the issue. You don't want to sand through on the edges or on the corners. You don't want to buff through, sand through. So at the very end, when I'm doing this by hand, I'm being very, very careful, very careful. And of course, like anything in painting, sanding, patience is of the essence. If you're really careful and really patient, you take your time, and you just go back and forth until that part is absolutely flat. And the 2000 grit, the advantage of doing it, if you use smoother, if you use 2500, it takes a lot longer to sand it out, and you didn't save much on the buffing. If you use 1500, the sanding goes quicker, but then you take twice as long buffing. So I've come up with a formula using a Harbor Freight, the $15 buffer, 8065 or the Meguiar's polish, and a brand new pad, and that is the biggest trick, the new pad. And I put that trick on many of the other tutorial videos. Trying to use an old pad, what happens is whatever compound or wax you're using on it, it hardens up in time. And it's like flypaper. It picks up little grit, the stuff you can hardly even see. So, and then when you go to paint, you're scratching the scratches, and just very frustrating. An 8065, like the Meguiar's polish or any of the good quality buffing compounds, it's made to be on either a soft sponge. I like the terry cloth pads better than a sponge, but they both work. But the trick is use a brand new one. Don't try to use the old one. And I know people that wash them, and I've tried to wash them, and with results, but to get that quality of finish where you can see the reflection of your glove in it. Once you get that once, and you have a part that's shiny, and that, I don't know, just smooth to the touch and whatever, you're not going to want to go back to any other system. You're not going to worry about the $2. Those pads are about $2 a piece. And I've tried other things, and I've tried the wool ones, and I've tried the microfiber ones, and they make 4 or 5 different types of pads. But with 8065 and the 4-to-1 urethane, this system that I've shown in detail many, many, many times, that system is, I think, the most bang for the buck. And the result is, I have been able to teach this to many, many people who get it right on the first shot, right on the first time. Now, Colonite wax is the next step. Now, the Colonite wax, and thank you, Joe Padula, for donating that. That is one of the nicest easiest on, easy off, and I love waxing things with that. I wax the wheels on the bikes. Anything I can just put a coat of wax on, and it's such a nice, it protects, it's easy to get on, and most of all, it's not like the old Simonized where you got to scrub it off. And brand new Kirkland microfibers. Brand new ones, not ones that have been washed 15 times. Now those parts are getting ready. It's time to have a nice cup of coffee and go out to the garage and get the install done on this. Should be pretty straightforward to get them in place. So relatively straightforward again. 2 screws to take the seat off the bike. Once you get the seat off, the old part comes off with 1 screw that's hidden behind the seat. Relatively easy. That is 3 little tricky tabs, and all 3 of them have to connect exactly right as you slide the part backwards. Very similar to an R6. And if you miss even one of them, that part is going to be rattling and shaking, and I don't even want to think about that. It's going to crack the part in some way. So I was really, really careful to make sure I had all 3 of the forward tabs, and in the final thing, the screw that holds it on, that it's in a rubber biscuit, so, and it's been reinforced with carbon fiber. So I wanted that part to be on there nice and solid, because your knee does rub up on that when you're cornering. That can be a tentative thing that you could crack the part, and well, I don't like cracking anything, to be honest. Seat goes back on. Now I can take a couple pictures, look at this from several different angles, see if I like it, or what the next step on my Evil Twin project is going to be. There's never an end to it. That's the whole thing. It's an ongoing thing for as long as you own the bike, and I don't ever intend on selling any bikes in the rest of my life. And I'm coming up on having owned this bike almost 14 years now, 35,000 miles. I've done a lot of Evil Twinning. The wheels are one thing. The badging, it's gone from Ferrari badging to stock badging to R1 badging. There's a million little details, like the mirrors being painted shiny. The carbon fiber parts I made, those are not from Yamaha, those are ones I made. The pillions, I have 2 different pillions. One of them is made out of wood. Kind of cool. The handlebars were the biggest thing to get right for the ergonomics. The tail tidy, I made a mold for that, and I have one on several other bikes. The sprockets, rear sprocket. Among other things, painting all these inner parts shiny black instead of flat black. Now to me, it changes the whole look of the bike. But painting the wheels was the biggest single thing. All these little carbon fiber brackets, I made every one of them. The headlight, I call them the Josh Hayes headlight removers. They were a labor of love, boy. And these parts have just added one more shiny part that isn't flat black. Well, I like the way it looks. I'm not sure you do, but it gives me the option now when I Evil Twin parts out, and I love to do that, change things out. It makes me always feel like I have an ongoing new motorcycle in the family when I don't have to buy one, I don't have to fix it, I don't have to register it and insure it. I just change the one I already have. It's called Evil Twins, and that part is part of having an Evil Twin. So I hope you did enjoy the video, and thanks so much for watching. So if you're new to the channel, I hope you enjoyed the video either way, and please join us again. We try to ride all of the bikes in our collection. We have a bike from every 10-year period. We have Evil Twins. We're constantly changing and moving parts around and trying to make them look like new bikes, make them feel like new bikes. And it works. And 2-strokes, we got some 2-stroke days coming up soon, I hope. It's been a wonderful summer, a wonderful fall, and hope you've enjoyed spending the days with us.